Now, do you think this idea is the president's way of backing down from a strike? I mean, does this look, I know you're not for a strike and you're for, you've been for example, helping the rebels instead, but does the way this has been handled, building up to these interviews and an address to the nation to justify a strike and instead saying, I'm open to not striking, does this make the president look unsure or ambivalent or worse, weak?
Well, look, again, I don't want to say anything that undermines the U.S.'s position globally on national security. I will say this, though. I think one of the things that's made this issue very difficult to deal with is the fact that for 2 years the administration has not made the case as to why Syria matters. And I'll confess there are people in my own party that have gone around for 2 years arguing that we shouldn't care about what's happening in Syria. We should care what's happening in Syria. It is a vital national security interest to the United States. Then the second question is, well, what do we do about it? And I've always believed and continue to believe that the best possible outcome is for Assad to be removed by his own people, by the Syrian people, and the U.S. should try to do what they can, what's possible to make that facilitated. Now, I thought it would have been a lot easier to do that 2 years ago, a year and a half ago.
Right.
I think accomplishing that has gotten more difficult because of these foreign fighters that have poured into Syria and these videos that we're seeing now on a steady basis and these horrible things that they're doing as well.
Are you still open to arming the rebels? Obviously, that's something you've talked about a lot. But, John Kerry says, look, 15 to 25% of the people fighting there could be, Al-Qaeda linked. So, are you willing to run the risk your weapons get in their hands?
Well, that's the fundamental question. Number one is, those foreign fighters that are doing these horrible things in Syria, they weren't there 2 years ago. They took advantage of a vacuum that existed because the more moderate elements were not well trained and well armed. I mean, meanwhile, these foreign fighters linked to Al-Qaeda were. I'm not in favor of arming the people that you've seen, on these videos that have been coming out. I'm not in favor of arming groups that are conducting mass executions. I'm not in favor of arming them. I'm in favor of trying to continue to identify moderate elements, train them, capacitate them, and then deliver weapons to them in an open way and in a way that ensures a chain of custody, that we control, that they can keep control of those weapons. I think it's gotten harder to do that. I will confess that it's gotten harder, and it may be harder to identify those types of rebels now, but I still think we should continue to try to explore that option, yes.
All right, and still try. Now, it looks, Senator Rubio, like the Senate vote on whether to strike Syria is actually put on hold. I mean, the Senate was obviously supposed to vote this week, but as you know, just a few moments ago, Majority Leader Harry Reid said he's delaying the process. Do you think the vote on the Syrian strike will get to the floor?
I don't know the answer to that. Obviously, I'm not in control of whether it does or does not. I know that the President and the White House are worried about whether they have enough votes to pass it and what that would mean to them and what it would mean to their domestic agenda, not just their foreign policy agenda. But I don't know where it's headed here in the Senate. I don't think anyone does. I certainly think it was wise to delay it, at least until we understand this proposal better. I have questions about this proposal that I'd like answered and learn more about its viability, but I certainly think it was prudent to delay it, given the President's new position now on Syria.
Yeah, and now another question for you. Obviously, some of your colleagues, as you're well aware, have said that this would be an act of war. The President has said it's not an act of war, so he could have gone ahead with the strike without your approval in Congress, but now obviously he's asked for your approval. And some of your colleagues have said that if the President were to go ahead with a strike after Congress votes no, that would be an impeachable offense. Do you agree?
Well, I think the President, all presidents, Republicans and Democrats, have the right to engage the United States military in the defense of our country, particularly on an urgent matter. President Reagan did it in Libya. He did it in Grenada. President Bush, the first, did it in Panama. So there's precedent for that. I think the President has the power to do that. I think in this case, this President, given the distrust of the federal government and specifically the distrust of this administration that now exists among the American public, I think this President had to come before the Congress and seek approval given those factors.
Which makes sense, but not a direct answer to my question. So you're saying you think he had to?
I think the President has the power to act in the national security interest of the United States. But I think this given President made the right choice in terms of submitting this to Congress because of the lack of confidence and the suspicion that now exists by a growing number of Americans, not just about this President, but about the federal government.
Right. All right. So not impeachable is the bottom line.
I think the President has the constitutional right to engage American military power. Presidents have done that. I think this President made the right choice, though, coming before this Congress, given the factors he's dealing with.
And now, obviously, of course, Senator, you're seen as one of the Republican frontrunners for 2016. And obviously, the question is, will it come to the floor? But most likely, you're going to have to vote on this issue, and there's no way around it. Some of your rivals, most prominently, of course, Chris Christie, doesn't have to vote on it. He doesn't have to say anything. And, we all remember how President Obama didn't have to vote on Iraq, so he could sell himself aggressively as anti-war. Hillary Clinton had to voted for the war, and then had to justify that, and it arguably hurt her significantly during the election. Are you jealous of Chris Christie?
No, because first of all, this issue is not about politics. This is, I mean, we're not debating here what to name a post office. This is not some symbolic issue. This is a national security issue. If there's any issue that should be above politics, it's our national security. So this issue deals with that. So I've already voted on this issue. I'm a member of Foreign Relations. I voted against this plan. I don't believe it's the right response. I do believe there needs to be a response, and I outlined very clearly what that response should be, and that is an effort to openly arm vetted elements of the rebels, if we can find any, creating a transition fund so that there can be a transition government in Syria once Assad falls, providing more humanitarian support for rebels, and providing more support for our allies in the region that are taking on these refugees that are coming in.
All right, well, Senator Marco...
And I apologize, I said humanitarian aid for rebels, I meant humanitarian aid for refugees.
Right, I understand. All right, Senator Marco Rubio.